when a nun got pregnant and claimed Satan did it. In 1602, behind the sacred walls of a convent in Milan, a nun gave birth to a stillborn child. When church investigators demanded answers, Sister Virginia Maria made a claim that would echo through history. She pointed to the heavens and declared that Satan himself had taken her body and soul. But the truth buried beneath her desperate lie would reveal a scandal so dark that it would inspire murder, torture, and one of the most notorious trials in religious history. This is the story of how a forced nun became Italy's most infamous religious criminal, and how the church's own investigation uncovered secrets that shattered the very foundation of holy vows. Sister Virginia Maria wasn't always destined for the convent walls. Born Mariana de Leyva y Marino around 1575 in Milan, she came from Spanish nobility with expectations as heavy as cathedral stones. Her father, a military commander, had plans that didn't include his daughter choosing her own path. When family honor demanded sacrifice, Mariana became that sacrifice. At just 16 years old, she was forced into the convent of San Margherita in Monza. The year was 1591, and taking holy vows wasn't a spiritual calling but a family transaction. Her father needed to secure political alliances, and unmarried daughters were expensive problems. The convent offered a solution that cost less than a dowry and removed a potential scandal from the family name. But forced devotion rarely breeds genuine faith. Sister Virginia Maria entered those walls carrying resentment that would fester for over a decade. The daily prayers, the silence, the restrictions. All of it felt like a prison sentence for crimes she never committed. And prisons, even holy ones, have a way of creating desperate people who make dangerous choices. The transformation from reluctant nun to scandalous criminal began with a single conversation. Count Giovanni Paolo Osio was a frequent visitor to the convent, a wealthy aristocrat whose donations kept the institution running. These weren't casual visits. Noble families often maintained connections with religious houses, and Osio's presence was both welcomed and necessary. What started as formal conversations through the convent's speaking grill slowly evolved into something far more dangerous. Sister Virginia Maria found herself looking forward to these encounters, craving the attention and worldly conversation that her cloistered life denied her. Osio, recognizing her hunger for connection, began to exploit it with practiced skill. The speaking grill that was meant to protect the nuns' chastity became the gateway to their destruction. Secret messages passed between them, hidden in religious texts and smuggled through sympathetic servants. What began as emotional affair soon demanded physical expression, and the sacred boundaries of the convent were about to be shattered completely. The affair escalated when Osio found ways to enter the convent itself. Corruption within religious houses wasn't uncommon during this period, and enough gold could convince certain nuns to look the other way. Private meetings became intimate encounters, and by 1602, the inevitable consequence of their relationship could no longer be hidden. Sister Virginia Maria was pregnant. The pregnancy created a crisis that threatened to destroy not just her life, but the lives of everyone who had enabled the affair. Medieval church law was unforgiving toward nuns who broke their vows of chastity, and the punishment for such transgressions could include public humiliation, permanent imprisonment, or even death. But if you think this is where you'll find out how they solved this massive problem, think again. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next reveals just how far people will go to protect their darkest secrets, and the solution they chose would make their original sin look innocent by comparison. When Sister Virginia Maria gave birth in 1602, the child was stillborn. Some historians suggest this wasn't natural, that the stress of concealing the pregnancy or deliberate actions led to this outcome. But dead infants tell no tales, and the immediate crisis seemed resolved until 1603 brought another pregnancy and another child, this time a daughter named Alma, who survived. 2 pregnancies meant the affair had continued despite the obvious risks. It also meant that more people within the convent knew about the relationship and were actively helping to conceal it. The web of complicity was growing larger and more dangerous with each passing month. Sister Benedetta Homati became the most significant threat to their secret. She had witnessed too much, asked too many questions, and made it clear that her silence couldn't be guaranteed forever. In the twisted logic of desperate people, eliminating Sister Benedetta seemed like the only solution to their growing problem. The murder was brutal and calculated. Sister Benedetta was found dead in what was staged to look like an accident. But the evidence pointed to deliberate violence. Multiple nuns had participated in either the killing itself or the cover-up that followed. What had begun as a secret affair had escalated into a conspiracy involving murder, and the church authorities were about to discover that their holy house harbored criminals. Church investigations in the early 1600s weren't gentle inquiries. When the authorities suspected serious violations of canon law, they employed methods that would make modern investigators uncomfortable. The canonical trial that began in 1607 and used interrogation techniques that included physical torture designed to extract confessions and uncover the full scope of the conspiracy. Under extreme pressure and facing the possibility of execution, Sister Virginia Maria made the claim that would define her legacy. She declared that she had lost her free will, that diabolical forces had possessed her body and mind. In essence, she claimed that Satan himself was responsible for her actions, that she had been an unwilling vessel for evil rather than a willing participant in sin. This wasn't just a desperate lie. It was a calculated legal strategy. Church doctrine acknowledged the possibility of demonic possession, and if her claim could be proven or even accepted as plausible, it might reduce her culpability for the crimes. The devil defense was rare, but not unheard of in ecclesiastical courts of this period. The investigators weren't easily convinced. They had physical evidence of the affair, testimony from multiple witnesses, and a dead nun whose murder had been carefully orchestrated. The claim of demonic possession required extraordinary proof, and Sister Virginia Maria's behavior during the investigation suggested calculated deception rather than supernatural influence. But here's where the story takes another dark turn that reveals just how deep the corruption ran, and why the church's final punishment would become a cautionary tale that echoed through centuries of religious history. The trial revealed layers of corruption that went far beyond a single nun's affair. Multiple sisters had participated in the conspiracy. Convent officials had accepted bribes to ignore obvious violations, and the murder of Sister Benedetta had been planned and executed with chilling precision. The convent of San Margherita had become a criminal enterprise disguised as a holy institution. Count Ossio's role in the conspiracy extended beyond his affair with Sister Virginia Maria. He had used his wealth and influence to corrupt multiple levels of the convent's hierarchy, creating a network of complicity that protected his access and concealed his actions. When the investigation began, he fled Milan to avoid arrest, abandoning Sister Virginia Maria to face the consequences alone. The church's final verdict in 1608 rejected the demonic possession defense entirely. Sister Virginia Maria was sentenced to 13 years of solitary confinement within convent walls, a punishment that meant complete isolation except for attending Mass and brief periods of silent prayer. She would be walled up alive, left to contemplate her crimes in darkness and silence. This sentence was actually merciful by the standards of the time. The murder of Sister Benedetta alone could have warranted execution, and the violation of holy vows typically brought harsh public punishment. But the church preferred to handle such scandals quietly. avoiding the public spectacle that would damage the institution's reputation. Sister Virginia Maria served her full sentence and was released in 1622. She lived quietly within the convent until her death in 1650, never again attempting to violate her vows or challenge church authority. The woman who had once claimed Satan possessed her spent her final decades in genuine prayer and penance. But her story didn't end with her death. The scandal became legendary throughout Italy, inspiring whispered tales of religious corruption and demonic influence. When Alessandro Manzoni wrote his famous novel The Betrothed in the 19th century, he created a character based directly on Sister Virginia Maria's crimes and punishment. The case also established legal precedents for how church courts would handle claims of supernatural influence in future trials. The rejection of her demonic possession defense sent a clear message that the church wouldn't accept supernatural explanations for criminal behavior without extraordinary evidence. However, Sister Virginia Maria's case wasn't the only time a nun would claim diabolic influence to explain shocking behavior. In 1607, another story unfolded in Sicily that would add an even stranger chapter to the history of nuns and supernatural claims. Sister Maria Crocifissa della Concezione was a 31-year-old Benedictine nun in Palma di Montechiaro when she experienced something that defied explanation. She awoke one morning covered in ink, clutching a letter written in a bizarre combination of Latin, Greek, Arabic, and unknown symbols. The nun claimed she had no memory of writing the document and insisted that the devil himself had possessed her hand to create the message. Unlike Sister Virginia Maria's case, this incident had no obvious criminal motive. Sister Maria Crocifissa wasn't trying to explain away an affair or murder. She genuinely seemed terrified by what had happened to her. The letter itself contained anti-religious statements and cryptic references that scholars couldn't fully decode for centuries. Modern analysis suggests that Sister Maria Crocifissa likely suffered from a psychiatric condition such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. The stress of religious life, combined with underlying mental health issues, could have produced the dissociative episode that resulted in the mysterious letter. But in 1676, such explanations weren't available, and the incident sparked intense church investigation and multiple exorcism attempts. The contrast between these two cases reveals how claims of diabolic influence serve different purposes in different contexts. Sister Virginia Maria used the devil defense as a legal strategy to avoid punishment for calculated crimes. Sister Maria Crocifissa appears to have genuinely believed she had been possessed, making her claim a symptom of mental illness rather than criminal deception. Both cases, however, demonstrate how the church's belief in supernatural forces could be exploited or misunderstood. The institutional power of religious courts meant that claims of demonic possession carried serious weight, even when the evidence suggested more mundane explanations. The legacy of Sister Virginia Maria's case extends far beyond her individual story. It exposed systematic corruption within religious institutions and revealed how power structures could be manipulated to conceal criminal behavior. The murder of Sister Benedetta showed that even sacred spaces weren't immune to violence when secrets needed protection. But there's something about Sister Virginia Maria's final years that church records tried to erase from history. The documents that survived her death reveal correspondence that suggests her story wasn't completely finished when she was released from solitary confinement. Letters written in her own hand reference unfinished business and mention names that investigators had never connected to the original conspiracy. Some historians believe that her 13 years of isolation weren't spent in repentance at all, but in planning something that would make her original crimes look like mere preparation for a much larger scheme. The truth about what Sister Virginia Maria was actually planning during those silent years of imprisonment might still be waiting in the Vatican's secret archives, and if those documents ever surface, they could rewrite everything we think we know about the most notorious nun in religious history.